Look around you. Everywhere, history tells a neat story. First simple settlements, then farming, then, boom, civilizations rise in the Middle East. But what if that entire history, what if everything you thought you knew about ancient Europe was just plain wrong? For centuries, we've looked at the massive stone structures dotting this continent, Stonehenge, the dolmens, the standing stones, and speculated. Were they built by druids, by giants, by people too simple to be true engineers? We've tried to fit these colossal monuments into our convenient little timeline, often dismissing them as primitive ancestors to the Greeks and Romans. But recent discoveries at Europe's oldest megalithic sites are not just challenging assumptions. They are ripping up the history books and rewriting the entire first chapter of European civilization. Archaeologists are unearthing evidence of astonishing feats of engineering and belief systems that are far more complex and far, far older than we ever dared to imagine. It turns out the first great architects of Europe were not wandering tribes. They were organized, brilliant, and their creations predate many of the world's most famous wonders. Imagine a civilization so advanced, they had the logistical genius to quarry multi-ton stones, some weighing more than a modern pickup truck, and move them across vast distances, all without the wheel, all without metal tools, leaving behind monuments that still baffle the most educated engineers today. These aren't just piles of rocks. They are precise astronomical observatories and powerful social hubs built by people we barely understand. We're talking about structures that, in some cases, are older than the first Mesopotamian cities. In this video, we're going to delve into Europe's most ancient megalithic sites, from the forgotten corners of Iberia to the mysterious mounds of the Balkans. We'll examine the groundbreaking findings that are unveiling the true genius of our earliest ancestors. Prepare to have your timeline shattered, because the silent giants have just awakened. Let's be honest. When you hear ancient stone structures in Europe, you picture Stonehenge. And why wouldn't you? It's iconic. But the focus on Stonehenge has actually blinded us to the true origins of megalithic architecture. For decades, archaeologists subscribed to the theory of diffusionism. The big ideas, agriculture, writing, and monument building, all started in the Near East, say Mesopotamia or Anatolia, and slowly diffused outward to the rest of the world, including Europe. Under this framework, Stonehenge, which primarily dates to around 2500 BCE, was considered a magnificent but derivative work, a late-blooming student of the masters in the East. But this theory has been proven fundamentally wrong. New radiocarbon dating methods have delivered a devastating blow to the old timeline, revealing monuments in Western Europe that are not just contemporary with, but far older than the supposed origin points. The true pioneers of European stone architecture didn't wait for permission. They began their work thousands of years earlier, particularly across the Iberian Peninsula. We're talking about sites built by early Neolithic people, not long after they adopted farming, suggesting monumental architecture was a foundational element of their culture. Consider the Almendres cromlech in Portugal. While it lacks the neat circularity of Stonehenge, it is a vast, elliptical complex of nearly 100 standing stones and menhirs. Its earliest phase? Around 6000 BCE. That's over 3,500 years before Stonehenge reached its final form. Looking at Almendres, you see an astronomical understanding that guided the placement of every single stone, aligned with the solstice, marking the cycles of life and farming. Moving into Spain, the scale gets even more dramatic. We look at the dolmen of Menga in Andalusia. Imagine hauling and setting the capstones for a burial chamber that is 27 meters long. The largest capstone alone is estimated to weigh 180 metric tons. This is a closed space, a testament to unimaginable collective effort, built before 3700 BCE. The logistics involved in moving stone that heavy without draft animals or complex machinery are staggering. It fundamentally changes our perception of Neolithic engineering capacity. Now cross the Mediterranean to the small island nation of Malta. Here, The megalithic story shifts from simple dolmens to highly sophisticated, complex temples. The Maltese temple builders created something unique. Massive stone structures with curving walls, internal courtyards, and altar spaces, dating back to roughly 3600 BCE. Sites like Gadar Kim and Menidra are architectural masterpieces. They weren't built with rough stones. These were finely cut limestone blocks, often finished with polished surfaces and intricate carvings. They contain multiple rooms and complex floor plans, often featuring oracle holes and sophisticated sound chambers. The complexity here suggests a highly specialized society, not just farmers who occasionally hauled stones, but specialized builders, priests, and astronomers working together. The significance? These Maltese temples were developed entirely independently. They don't look like anything in the Near East. They are a homegrown European architectural tradition that sprang into existence with astonishing speed and sophistication, once again, long before the grand monuments of classical antiquity. The cumulative message from these sites, Iberia, Malta, and the earliest dolmens in the Balkans, is clear. Europe had its own equivalent to Göbekli Tepe, the 10,000-year-old sanctuary in Turkey. These weren't primitives struggling to stack rocks. These were organized communities with an advanced grasp of geometry, acoustics, and engineering. The act of building these massive monuments wasn't a sideline. It was the main event, a unifying social and religious endeavor. And that, perhaps, is the greatest mystery. Why did they expend so much energy on permanence? On structures that were designed to last, not just years, but millennia. They were staking their claim to the land, linking their living communities with their ancestors, and charting their future against the clockwork motion of the cosmos. These forgotten wonders demand our attention. They are the undeniable evidence that monumental architecture and organized society emerged in Europe thousands of years earlier than we were taught. But knowing when they built these is only half the battle. The truly mind-bending question is how. How did people, with only bone, wood, and stone tools, quarry, move, and perfectly align stones weighing up to 180 metric tons? It's a puzzle that has driven modern archaeologists to try to replicate their methods. And what they've discovered is even more astonishing than the monuments themselves. We've established the staggering antiquity and the immense scale of these European megaliths. Now, we confront the core mystery. How? How did Neolithic humans, without the wheel, without iron, without even basic pulley systems as we know them, quarry, move, and precisely erect stones weighing up to 180 metric tons, as seen at Menga? This isn't just heavy lifting, this is a profound challenge to our understanding of prehistoric physics. For centuries, the easiest answer was to invoke the supernatural, giants, or perhaps divine intervention. But archaeology demands a real-world answer. The engineering required was less about superhuman strength and more about sophisticated leveraging of simple tools, understanding of friction, and organized human power. The key lay in geometry and collaboration. The secret wasn't complex machinery, it was complex social organization. Think about quarrying. At sites like the Carrowmore complex in Ireland, archaeologists found evidence of stones being split not with chisels, but using a method called fire and water. They'd heat the rock face with intense fires and then rapidly cool it with water, exploiting the stone's natural stress fractures. Simple, brutal, and effective. Once quarried, the stones had to travel. And this is where experimental archaeology steps in. The scientific practice of testing ancient techniques. The leading hypotheses focus on reducing friction and maximizing available labor. One successful theory suggests the use of wooden sledges on carefully lubricated paths. Teams in the Netherlands and the UK have shown that by creating pathways of wet clay, or even placing round logs perpendicular to the path, small groups of people can move surprisingly heavy objects. It's less about rolling the stone and more about sliding it, minimizing the surface area that is in contact with the ground. The most astonishing recent success involves the erection phase. How do you lift a 50-ton lintel onto 2 vertical stones? Experiments suggest a method of walking the stone upright, using ropes and simple wooden levers. a technique proven successful in replicating menhir erection. And for the giant capstones? The prevailing theory involves building a massive earthen ramp. They would haul the stone up the ramp, position it, and then meticulously excavate the earth from beneath, leaving the structure standing. This is a monumental effort, but entirely achievable with organized, focused human labor. But the genius of these builders extends far beyond brute force mechanics. These sites were not merely structures. They were precision instruments for tracking time and the cosmos. The evidence for sophisticated astronomical alignments at newly excavated sites is overwhelming. At Newgrange in Ireland, which predates the Egyptian pyramids by centuries, the narrow roof box above the entrance is perfectly aligned so that the rising sun on the winter solstice penetrates the chamber, illuminating the inner sanctum. This wasn't accidental. It required precise geometry, long-term observation, and generational commitment to complete the alignment. Furthermore, many sites, particularly the stone circles in Brittany and the Balkans, exhibit evidence of precise geodetic planning. Archaeologists are finding that the geometry used to lay out the circles and ellipses corresponds to sophisticated mathematical ratios. This implies a level of abstract thought and numerical understanding that fundamentally challenges the primitive label we often attach to the Neolithic era. They were using their monuments as giant, immovable calendars, tying their agricultural survival and spiritual practices directly to the movement of the heavens. What does this all tell us? These advanced construction techniques, combined with the astronomical precision, force us to acknowledge a stunning reality. Prehistoric intelligence was not inferior to ours. It was simply applied differently. It required immense levels of collaboration and organization. Moving those stones wasn't the work of a single family. It was the work of entire communities, perhaps spanning entire regions, requiring coordinated effort over years or even generations. The construction of a single megalithic site was a powerful, unifying social event, a symbol of their collective identity and shared belief system. This level of organized planning is the true marvel, proving that large-scale, coordinated societies were flourishing in Europe millennia before recorded history began. These structures are the enduring testament to their brilliance, and the next segment will explore the rich, complex beliefs that drove them. We've established the genius of the builders, their engineering, their astronomy, their organization. But these colossal stones were not erected just to show off their muscle. They were built for a profound purpose, rooted in a belief system far richer than simple survival. For decades, many archaeologists categorized megaliths primarily as tombs, simple places for burial. And while many do contain human remains, that's just one piece of a much larger, more complex spiritual puzzle. The latest theories suggest a powerful shift in understanding. These sites were not merely cemeteries. They were the spiritual and social anchors of early agricultural societies. They were grand, permanent stages for elaborate ritual practices that bound the community together, perhaps across multiple generations. The builders were staking a claim not just to the land, but to the eternal cycles of life, death, and renewal. The concept of ancestor worship is central to this new consensus. Imagine a newly settled Neolithic farming community. The land is everything. It provides life, but it also presents constant challenges. By burying their elders within these massive stone chambers and returning to these sites for ceremonies, they were literally solidifying their connection to the land through their lineage. The dead became powerful intermediaries. They were the ones who had successfully completed the cycle and could intercede with the forces of nature. The megaliths, therefore, functioned as liminal spaces, gateways between the world of the living and the realm of the ancestors. The community wasn't just visiting a tomb. They were actively engaging in a dialogue with their history. This explains the immense effort. A tomb built of wood decays. A tomb built of 100-ton stones endures. It's a permanent, undeniable title deed to the land, reinforced by spiritual power, projecting the community's claim far into the future. What kind of dialogue were they having? New discoveries of artifacts within and around these megalithic structures give us tantalizing clues about their cosmic worldview. At several dolmens, archaeologists have found evidence of specialized offerings, not just practical tools but ceremonial pots, beads, and unique carvings. These items suggest highly formalized, repeatable rituals. Perhaps the most captivating clues come from the rock art. Within the inner chambers of many Irish and French megaliths, we find intricate, abstract carvings, spirals, zigzags, concentric circles, that are often illuminated only during specific astronomical events, like the winter solstice we discussed. These patterns are not random decoration. They are likely cosmic maps, sacred symbols representing the sun, the moon, the cycles of life, and the passage of time. These carvings transform the stones from cold rock into a canvas for their spiritual beliefs. They confirm that the builders were looking up at the sky, charting the stars, and translating those observations into a structured, architectural representation of the universe. Ultimately, the archaeological picture is coalescing around the idea that these megalithic sites were the central hubs of prehistoric life. They were places where communities met for rituals, trade, feasting, and the creation of a collective shared identity. The monumental construction itself was the ritual, a unifying project that defined us versus them. This sophisticated blend of engineering, astronomy, and complex spiritual practice reveals a Neolithic Europe that was anything but primitive. It was a world of deep faith, incredible social organization, and visionary builders who bequeathed us a legacy that fundamentally rewrites the story of human ingenuity. We've seen their structures, we've examined their methods, and we've glimpsed their faith. Now, let's wrap this up by looking at how this all shatters our historical timeline. We began this journey by questioning everything we thought we knew about ancient Europe. Now, we must confront the total sum of these incredible discoveries. The evidence is undeniable. Europe's first monumental civilization did not wait for influence from the East. It developed independently, rapidly, and with breathtaking sophistication. The implications of the radiocarbon dating are nothing short of a chronological earthquake. For so long, the accepted narrative placed European development thousands of years behind the Mesopotamian and Egyptian river valley cultures. But when you have Almendres Cromlech dating to 6000 BCE and the Maltese temples flourishing around 3600 BCE, all featuring architectural and astronomical planning, it forces a fundamental reevaluation. Europe was an architectural pioneer, not a cultural recipient. The timeline we learned in school is simply obsolete. This concept of autochthonous development, meaning growth from the land itself, is crucial. It tells us that human ingenuity is not confined to one cradle of civilization. When conditions were right, when food security allowed for surplus labor, and when a shared spiritual need emerged, brilliant architecture happened. And it happened everywhere. The evidence from these forgotten sites proves that the capacity for large-scale, planned, and organized society emerged with the advent of farming in Europe. These weren't primitives struggling to adapt. They were pioneers who immediately utilized their new stability to create permanent cultural anchors. The logistical challenges they overcame, the scale of the quarrying, the precision of the alignments, speak to an intellectual maturity that we have consistently underestimated. It means that the ability to conceive of an abstract celestial calendar, translate it into terrestrial geometry, and then mobilize an entire community to execute that vision was a uniquely European achievement, thousands of years before the Greeks theorized about geometry. But the legacy of these megalithic builders extends beyond just dates and architecture. It's a powerful lesson in collaboration. Every single stone, every intricate carving represents an investment of collective energy and shared vision. These sites are monuments to community and persistence. Think back to the 180-ton capstone at Menga. That stone didn't move because one person was strong. It moved because hundreds, perhaps thousands of people worked together, following a plan set down by an engineer they trusted. It demonstrates that the ability to sustain a large, coordinated project over years, demanding specialized skills from quarrymen to ritual leaders, was established in Europe's deep past. This level of societal complexity, coordination, and specialization, built on shared cosmological beliefs, is what truly defines these forgotten wonders. They were the original social contracts, written in stone, ensuring the continuity of their identity against the ceaseless march of time. The silent giants have indeed awakened, and their message is humbling. We are descendants of minds that were highly capable, highly organized, and deeply spiritual. They left us not just stones, but a challenge to keep digging, to keep questioning, and to keep learning from the unwritten chapter of our history. The truth is, for every site we've explored today, for every Almendres or every Maltese temple, there are dozens more, waiting beneath the earth, waiting to be properly dated, waiting to share their secrets. Our understanding of European history is constantly evolving, and the story of human ingenuity, it turns out, is far more complex, beautiful, and ancient than we ever imagined. The ancient stones have spoken. They tell a story not of scattered, struggling tribes, but of a brilliant, organized, and deeply spiritual Europe that thrived thousands of years earlier than our history books allowed. We've seen their three incredible truths laid bare. First, the antiquity. Megalithic culture was an independent European phenomenon, flourishing before the Great Pyramids and the first recorded cities of Mesopotamia. Second, the engineering. Their ability to move and align 100-ton stones proves a command of physics, collaboration, and long-term planning that borders on the miraculous, achieved only with sheer ingenuity and social genius. And third, the belief. These sites were cosmic observatories and social anchors, built to bind the living to the dead, tying their community's fate directly to the eternal, predictable cycles of the stars. This is our inheritance. A powerful, humbling legacy left by ancestors who saw permanence not as a luxury, but as a necessity. They built monuments to outlast their own existence, embedding their history directly into the landscape for us to find thousands of years later. But here's the kicker. For every Almendres we've analyzed, for every dolmen of Menga we've understood, there are countless megalithic sites still buried, still waiting to be properly excavated, still waiting to deliver the next chronological shockwave. History isn't fixed. It's a continuous archaeological discovery. And it's a story we are still collectively writing. So, what does this rewritten history mean to you? Did these discoveries about our ancient, ingenious ancestors shatter your understanding of the past? We want to know. Jump into the comments below and share your mind-blowing theories about who you think these original builders were.